This is the I Read Comic Books podcast, the very best podcast for regular comic book fans. I'm your host, Mike Rapin, and joining me this week, two gonk droids in the Judland Wastes. This week, I'm joined by Paul Jasley.
Hello, humanoids.
And the one and only Nick White.
I'm not broken. Take me home, Uncle Owen.
Thank you both for joining me this week on May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. And as some guy on TikTok said, how dare you appropriate that old religion? But I'm very excited to talk with both of you today. We had a bit of a schedule mishap. So, if you were prepared to hear me and Paul talking to someone else who we didn't actually announce, well, it's Nick White this week. And I hope everyone is excited about that.
Sorry.
Nick, I'm kidding. We love you. I'm very excited to talk to both of you about comic books today because we before we got into recording, we had a lot of thoughts about some things, and maybe we're going to touch on those things specifically when it comes to one of the books that we've been reading or plan to read. So why don't we just get right into things? I'll ask those two legally mandated questions that I have on the show, and that is, how have you been? How have comic books been? Paul, let's start with you.
Thank you, Mike. Well, first I'd like to say I'm Star Wars Orthodox, so I only celebrate Life Day, but I appreciate everyone else saying May the 4th. I don't want to rain everybody's parade. No, it's been good. It was a lovely weekend here in West Michigan. We're getting very close to being like peak summer warmness and sunshine. I walked to the farmer's market yesterday, so feeling rejuvenated. Also a great time to sit outside and read some comics, which I did. Basically, again, I feel like every time I come on the show this time, I'm just going to talk about the Fantastic Four. That's what I'm going to do this time. That's really like what my main focus of reading has been lately.
Paul, I'm so excited that you are so hyped for this new Fantastic Four movie. That I'm glad that you've been inspired to just only think and read Fantastic Four recently.
If the movie isn't good, at least I read some amazing comics. I mean, there we go.
That's
true.
The goal. That's true.
So yeah, for listeners who maybe aren't aware, I made a goal to read all of the Fantastic Four issues that were written and drawn by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby in the 60s before the movie came out. That's about, I think they do the first 104 issues, that maybe including the annuals. Anyway, it's a lot of comics. So this weekend, I just hit issue 50, so I'm about halfway through. You can call me John Bon Jovi. I'm halfway there. And I think last time I mentioned I was in the good stuff, and boy, oh boy, I am in the peak, amazing, mind-blowing comic stuff. These issues are fantastic, no pun intended. Like, this is truly, truly amazing comics. You can see why the Fantastic Four is so popular, and a lot of it has to do with Jack Kirby going full Kirby. Like, there's the early issues are good, and I think I mentioned last time I talked about it, like, you can see now when I read these comics, I see the Kirby that I've read from his 70s stuff, the DC New God stuff, the Fourth World. He's reaching that level. And again, I love the idea of a creator. He's in his late 40s. He's 47, 48 when he's drawing these comics. He's been drawing comics since the 30s, and he's still finding new ways to draw and show stuff and new techniques. It's really, really mind-blowing. So these issues, I read about, I think, issue 41 through 50, including annual number 3, written by Stan Lee, art by Jack Kirby. I think inks are mostly by Vince Colletta, and then Joe Sinnott joins the book midway through. Letters, I think, overall by Artie Simek. But it's really Jack and Stan have hit their stride. The stories are clicking. And it's not just, I mean, they are 60s comics. They are overwritten by Stan Lee. They are incredibly sexist at times towards Sue, thanks to Stan Lee. But there's still something really like modern about these books. I think a lot of it is the fact that it shifted from being a new villain every month to being a rolling story that continues issue to issue. And I think it's a very modern way to write comics. And especially when you get to issue 44, starts an Inhuman story, which wraps up within the first 6 pages of issue 48. Then issue 48 becomes the first Galactus story. So it's like, we're going to stop this Inhuman story halfway through the issue, then here's the Silver Surfer and Galactus. And it's just like, oh, okay. Talk about like a gear shift in the middle of a comic. And it's so fascinating. And yet it's not jarring because the book just has this momentum to it. So anyway, I do want to shout out a few key issues. Annual number 3 is the wedding of Reed Richards and Sue Storm. It's a really fun issue because basically everybody shows up. It's an excuse to show all of the Marvel characters. Like,
yeah.
Dr. Doom mind controls all the villains to attack. Therefore, all the heroes show up to defeat them. It's right. It's goofy. Matt Murdock's their lawyer, so of course he's there, and all of a sudden he has to become Daredevil. Spider-Man shows up for one panel. Again, it's an old comic, but it has the feel of a modern crossover issue, anniversary issue. It's really fun.
Sure. I mean, when I think of like the Alex Ross, was it Mark Waid Marvel series, right? Like I remember the Fantastic Four marriage thing being like the big like pivotal moment, and I remember that feeling like such a momentous thing in that book, because obviously it was like maybe the first time like all of the Marvel universe is kind of in one room together to say like we're all here, we're sharing this thing. It's good to hear that feels, maybe it sounds like it felt the same way in reading the actual Fantastic Four issue.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like a big deal, and like it's a testament to the way Stan is able to promote Marvel. Like it's like, okay, this is important stuff. And
totally.
Issue 44 is the first issue with Joe Sinnott on inks, and I cannot overstate what a difference Joe Sinnott makes to Kirby's artwork. There were good inkers before this. There were bad inkers before this, because the issues before this were inked by Vince Colletta, and suddenly there were a lot fewer backgrounds on these panels when Vince Colletta was inking this book for some reason. All of a sudden, Joe Sinnott shows up. Everything's in full glorious detail. The Kirby dynamics and machines are all super intricate. The facial expressions are all very like humanistic and like emotional. Joe Sinnott makes Kirby's artwork sing, and I think Kirby responds by going bigger and bigger with Joe Sinnott on inks. It's really night and day once you get to issue 44 and Joe Sinnott takes over. It's really, really amazing. It's also the first Inhuman story, and you might think, I don't really get what the Inhumans are supposed to be. I don't think Stan and Jack could get him either. So it's pretty fun to read them. It's fun stuff. But then, like I said, right after the Inhuman story, you get 48 through 50, which is the Galactus trilogy. Completely mind-blowing comics. I mean, going from, I love Doctor Doom, I love the Villain of the Month stuff, but when you get to this cosmic showdown between Galactus, the Watcher, and Silver Surfer, it's like, okay, we're dealing on another level. Like Kirby's doing cosmic comics, and the artwork matches it. There's a moment where the Watcher sends Johnny Storm, he sends him to the center of infinity. And there's a moment where he says, you've ceased to exist in your own time continuum. And you see like Johnny Storm almost like turn into energy and travel through space. And it's like the way Kirby draws it is like so mind blowing. And then there's a weirdness to the issue. And then when Johnny comes back, he gets the ultimate nullifier, spoiler alert for a 60-year-old comic, and comes back the ultimate nullifier. And he's just like, his mind is shaken. He's like, I cannot comprehend what I just saw. Like, we're just ants. We're insignificant. And the Watcher just says like, he'll forget about it. The human mind isn't supposed to understand that stuff anyway. And it's like, when you're reading that, it's like, it's so great. It's so amazing that Kirby's mind is working at that level. It's like, don't worry. If you don't get it, it's not for humans to understand. I really love this stuff. And then the Silver Surfer is a character I've never quite understood. And I feel like the Silver Surfer that Jack Kirby creates is very different from the character, the Silver Surfer that Stan Lee goes on to write. If that makes sense. Like the Silver Surfer in this issue is very alien. He's not a humanoid that turned into an alien. He is very alien. He doesn't understand human emotion. Alicia Masters tries to feed him lunch, and he's just like, this is a waste trying to eat this. I'll just turn it into energy and absorb it. And just like, it's the way he approaches the world is so strange. It's really great stuff. I'm having so much fun reading this stuff, especially get to these issues. So I want to say for listeners who are curious, I think you can jump in with annual number 3, which leads right into issue 44. So you can jump into annual number 3, and then read that through the Galactus trilogy. And from then on, it's all great stuff. I'd read the Galactus trilogy a couple years ago, and it's really fun to go back and reread it, having read later Kirby and having read all the issues leading up to it. It kind of hits differently. So I'm really loving this stuff. It makes me very excited and cautiously optimistic for the movie, because I feel like they're going to do the Galactus story in the movie. So I would say if you are curious about why the Fantastic Four are so great, these would be the issues to read for sure.
Gotcha. Well, what we got to do now is we got to have you sit down and say like, hey, I read all of Jack and Stan's, Fantastic Four. Here are the absolute issues you need to read, so that we can, farm it out to the internet. But I do think that there is some value in it for someone like myself, who is Jack and Stan Fantastic Four curious. Like what are the actual issues I'd want to read if I want to just like feel like I'm getting the good stuff, and then maybe if I've got time, maybe I go back and read the other stuff. So that'd be an interesting experiment. Maybe we could talk about.
Oh yeah, for sure. But, I love to spread the gospel of Jack Kirby, obviously. So like, I'm down for that.
I mean, I'm wearing my Jack Kirby shirt today. Perfect. That short-lived T-shirt that we made on the IRCB store. So, Nick, let's kick over to you. What is on the top of, or what now? How have you been? How have comic books been? I don't know where I'm at today.
I've been pretty good. As Paul sort of got at, the weather has gotten a little bit more palatable here in Michigan. Things have been good. The elusive, and yet ubiquitous Zander and I actually hung out yesterday, and we played some Magic, and by that I mean he let me win once or twice. For those who aren't aware, Zander is actually ranked like 12th in the world.
Xander's gonna cut all of that out, Nick. You know that he has final control over this episode.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. None of that is true, except for the part where he kicked my ass in Magic. That part did.
Okay.
That part did happen. Yeah. No. Beyond that, I did get around to reading some comics, including one series that I have actually put off now for a couple months. Which is The Seasons, which is by Rick Remender on writing. You might know him from one of a ton of really well-known titles, whether that's Deadly Class, most recently, The Holy Roller, or A Righteous Thirst for Violence. The list goes on and on and on and on and on.
Sacrificers,
Science, Sacrificers.
You may also know Rick Remender from Nick and I spending the last 10 years of this podcast reading Rick comics and trying to figure out whether or not we like them.
Yeah,
but consistently going back every single time for a new book.
right. And honestly, the last couple years, Righteous Thirst for Violence, Sacrificers. Really good. I actually haven't read Holy Roller yet. Unfortunately, that's because I am always nervous when a book has like 2 or 3 celebrity names on it, and I'm like, what? Because that book is what, Andy Samberg and the guitarist of Fall Out Boy, I think.
I'm pretty sure. I think at least
Troman.
Andy Samberg is involved. Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, which isn't fair. I think I will eventually read that. Anyway, probably most importantly, this book has Paul Azaceta on art. If you aren't familiar with Paul Azaceta, the dude is amazing. He did BPRD in 1946. He's probably best known for doing Outcast with Kirkman, which of course went about 50 issues, ended up getting adapted into a Showtime series, which I think ran from about 2016 to 2018. I never saw the show. We also have Matthias Lopez on colors, who did the colors for Helen of Windhorn, and letters by Russ Wooten, who is perhaps best known for doing the letters on almost all of The Walking Dead, outside of the first 20 or so issues, which Kirkman did himself. So, yeah, Azaceta is probably should be enough to sell people on this book, because Outcast is one of the scariest books I have ever read.
It's a really good looking book in general. Like,
yes,
I hesitate to say that it is like one of the best looking image books that you can buy. Like, but I remember pulling Outcast and Saga side by side and being like, I'm in the fucking best time of comic books ever. Right? Like, it's some really, really good comic books.
It's really scary, and it's not scary in the way that I think a lot of other conventional books are scary. This is like so much about demonic possession and exorcisms and making that stuff feel like grounded in ways that's like really terrifying. I'd recommend the book if you're in the right headspace to read something like that. So yes. As for Seasons, like I said, I feel like, Rick Remender mostly can do little wrong at this point. His part from A Righteous Thirst for Violence, where the guy breaks the light bulbs and then like tortures the dude with the shards, is indelibly seared in my mind forever.
Maybe one of the darker books I've read from Image in recent history.
Yep. But like I said, Azaceta back on a book is just amazing. We've seen him do cover duty sporadically the last couple of years, but we've just never really seen him on anything else. And in years past, I would go, well, I wonder why we haven't seen this person in comics in such a long time. And once you've learned a little bit about comics, you sort of get to have a pretty good idea why you maybe don't have someone hanging around in comics for more than a couple of years. Who knows what the case is for Azaceta. let's look at the solicit for this book, guys. Let's listen to this, and you tell me if you want to read this book. Okay.
This feels like a thought experiment that I'm about to be brought into, but okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So here's the solicit from Image. Summer, winter, spring, and autumn are the Seasons sisters, the daughters of the world-renowned Seasons detectives. 10 years ago, their famous parents disappeared. Left to raise themselves, the sisters formed an unbreakable bond. Now that bond is tested as the sisters fall prey to sinister forces. The youngest sister, Spring, is the last hope of saving them from a fate worse than death. Will Spring be able to piece her shattered family back together before it's too late for them all?
I mean, it sounds corny. It sounds like a children's book, but also I'm in, right? You basically gave the 4 seasons personalities, and their parents are detectives. I'm in.
Yeah.
What else do you want me to be? What were you expecting us to say here, Nick?
No, I guess that sounds bad. And why?
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So, would you also be surprised if in the Image promotional materials for this book they said, "Perfect for fans of boundary-breaking horror in all forms"? And I'm like, okay. This is interesting. But I really sat down and I'm like, I trust these guys. What's going on with this book? And so, like, for the first 3/4 of this 47-page issue, you're like, well, maybe this is what the solicit says. You're just following Spring Seasons around, and she's a letter courier, and she's just chasing the letter all through the town, and it's comical, and she's riding around in her motor scooter, and she's knocking over the bookseller's coffee, and she's tromping through the bakery and knocking all the layers of the cake up into the air comically and catching them all. And it feels like that part in Beauty and the Beast, right, where she's just twirling around the city and she's like, oh, I love living here, and this guy's the brewer. And I haven't seen this movie in forever, but this happens, right? I think this happens.
You're 100% right.
Yeah. So it feels exactly like that. And you're like, how much whimsy is this book going through? Like, what's going on? And then suddenly you realize that this letter is so important because it's not just any letter. It's meant for her. It's from her sister. And it comes with some uncomfortable truths. And the tone of the book changes. And it's one of those changes that happens where you're like, wait, is this a different artist? Is this a different colorist? And then you flip to the credits page and you're like, oh my God, this is the same 2 guys. Wow. Like, holy shit. Like, what talent. I don't want to say anything more about this book. Obviously, it is Rick Remender, which means it does start to get a little darker, start to explore some different ideas. And I would just say, check out this book. I don't want to spoil anything more. I think, if anything else, visually, it's amazing. It's really, really good.
I don't know how I missed this book because as I said, we've been talking about Rick Remender books for a decade, right? And I consistently go back to try his books, even though I've been burned and I liked some of them and I disliked some of them. The guy's always doing something so interesting that I'm just like, well, let me give this new number 1 a shot. I don't know how I missed this one because I've checked I've checked out the rest of them. So yeah, I will. Is this part of his like? Oh no, that's Jeff Johns. Never mind. I was going to say part of the big like multi-universe thing. That's Jeff Johns thingy. No, I think he's just publishing a lot of Image books. This Rick Remender guy. So
yeah,
but yeah, Paul Azaceta. I'm in. Like that's an easy sell for this. Like that's a crazy combo. And if you're saying just issue 1 is great, if I'm not mistaken, there's like 4 or 5 issues out now. So like. Yeah, maybe I'll power through those. I'll go find those in the
exactly. And there's a really interesting sort of essay or thought piece at the back of the issue by Remender, which talks about how this book came together and what he's trying to shoot for, and of course he brings up, and I both roll my eyes and say, okay, that makes sense when he says, I wanted this to be like Tintin. Okay, that's fair.
Okay,
because there is some of that, and it's just a beautiful book. With an interesting little twist. I'm curious to see if or how dark this book could get, because I would prefer if it doesn't get quite to the levels of a righteous thirst for violence.
Sure.
If anything else,
I think that's like the new far edge defined by Remender about how far he's willing to go in a book, maybe.
Right, which is so weird because like it is undoubtedly one of his most violent books, but there are also less violent books of his where I will not finish the series and I will roll my eyes and go, okay, whatever. But like that book was just so compelling, just so can't look away. So bottom line here, if you were like me initially and you were like, this book looks kind of cutesy and kind of weird and I don't know, check it out.
I mean, the cover does not look very cutesy. Like it feels like it's got an interesting look, but it also feels very dark. So yeah, Nick, you've sold me to try this one more Rick Remender book. I think, Paul, the question is, are you sold? Because I will pick up any Image book for the most part. So
okay, yeah, my experience with Rick Remender is very limited. I tried some of his Image stuff. It didn't work for me, but he did the Frankencastle Punisher stuff, right? Which I thought was... Remember when Frank Castle became Frankenstein for like 6 months? Like, I like that.
But Remender, yeah.
Was this a fever dream Paul had?
No.
This was real. This is real. Like zombified Frankencastle. Yeah. There's a series called The Punisher: Frankencastle, written by Rick Remender and Marjorie Liu.
There we go.
Daniel Way had a piece in it. John Romita Jr. did some art. Tony Moore. James Herron, Steven Segovia, these are big names in comics, in my opinion, right?
That was good stuff. I remember liking that quite a bit. And then Paul, as I said, is an amazing artist. And funny, I remember like reading he did a brief run on Spider-Man when I was still reading Spider-Man regularly, probably 15 years ago. And I was like, who is this? Because it looks so different from regular Spider-Man artwork.
Yeah.
So I've always been a fan of his. And again, like you said, Nick, you don't see that name pop up too often. So whenever you do, it's worth checking out. So yeah, I'm gonna have to dig these issues up. This sounds good.
Yeah, we'll have to come back on this, Nick. This will be exciting. You've done it again, you son of a bitch. Another series that I gotta keep up with.
As a setup, what a surprise! Like you see Mike Mignola do interiors more than you see Paul Azaceta do interiors. Which is saying something.
That is true. That's true. Well, let me talk about what I've been up to. I've lived through a very hellish week. For good reasons, right? Had the floors refinished in my house, which means that I had to figure out where I was sleeping every night of the week, basically, like in a different spot in my house. It's just very weird. But it's nice. It's very interesting if you live in a place and you just, you have like, this is my bedroom, this is my normal place. If you have to sleep and live in other places than you normally spend a lot of time, it's a very interesting experience. So like one night I slept on the couch in our living room. One night I slept in this other bedroom that we have. One night I almost slept in the office, but I decided against it because sleeping in a small like lounge chair is not really a good idea, I think, for your body in general. But yeah, so we had to move every item in our house, which is a very exhausting and anxiety inducing experience when you're like, I just need a sense of normalcy, and you can't live like that for a week. And I worked nomadically for the first time in a very long time, where every day I was up at 7, took a shower, grabbed all my stuff, let the floor guys come in, and then I would bounce between a Dunkin' Donuts, a coffee shop, and one eatery of my choice in the local neighborhood because I just couldn't work in the house. So yeah, very, very interesting, weird week, but I think it was like, it got some gunk out of my head because I feel very just like rested now that I'm home and I can actually be in my house. My office is still very empty, so I'm still very disconnected from my comics, which is a strange feeling, but I know where they all are, and I'm starting to look at all the empty shelves in my office, and I'm like, I think I know where things are going to go. For those of you who are watching the video on Patreon, or maybe you're seeing a TikTok or something, and I don't know why I would clip this for a TikTok, but who knows, maybe I will. Behind me is a big blank blue wall. There's like a window over there, but eventually all of my comic book pages are going to go up here, and it's going to be really cool. You're going to see the near demonic Department of Truth page that I got framed in this nice dark orange frame, or brown and orange frame. It's going to be right above my head. So I'm definitely putting a curse on myself here in the near future. Is
that the wall that used to have the decal?
Oh no, there is a wall to my left here that had it had a bookshelf in front of it for a long time, and I rearranged things so there's no longer a bookshelf. And I forgot that when we moved in, there was this room that is now my office, definitely was like a kid's bedroom, and they had up some vinyl decal on the wall of a basketball player, and have since removed it, but the outline of the decals there. So in the right light, there's just like a phantom basketball player on the wall.
It's like a Shroud of Turin sort of like,
right? It's like the aftermath of an atom bomb. It's like the aftermath of an atom bomb, but it's a basketball player. It's so ridiculous. But yeah, so it's been a very interesting week for me, but I did manage to sit down and read some comics. I actually read quite a few comics. We just recorded an episode of IRCB Movie Club, so I read through All You Need Is Kill, the manga series based on the light novel. And if you're on the Patreon, go check that out. Paul, Brian, and I just talked about that yesterday. It's going to be a really fun episode for everybody out there. But I did sit down and I read an Image book that comes out this upcoming week called Blood and Thunder. This is written by Benito Cereno, art by E.J. Sue, who is also the artist on Tech Jacket with Robert Kirkman back in the day. Mm-hmm. Colors by Messiah, letters by Russ Wooten, as similar to Seasons, if I'm not mistaken, right? So this is a very interesting book because I just jumped into it because Blood and Thunder, what a cool sounding comic book name. And then I got to the credits and it was like created by Robert Kirkman, Benito Cereno, and E.J. Sue. And I was like, now what the fuck is this on about, right? Like, it's a Skybound book. That's fine. There's nothing really that wrong with Skybound books, but it was an interesting concept in that I thought, the idea of the story as a classic kind of private detective sci-fi story that takes place on this like satellite world where there are different tiers of people that live in different castes. So based on the tier of the satellite that you live on, like tier 4 or tier 1 is the highest and the floor is the lowest, and it goes like 1 through 4, and then the floor is the last one. And so we follow this character named Akaldama Bledsoe and her somewhat, I know it's a very complicated name, but she is Blood, and her uncooperative gun, who is like a living weapon kind of, is called Thunder. And so they live on this thing. She's a private detective. She's chasing down this guy. His name is Herp the Perp. Who is constantly in and out of jail perpetrator, hence his name. And it's a very interesting thing. We get this scene very early on about how there's going to be, it's clear skies on tier 1. But at night, they're going to be running these misting protocols to kind of clear out the gutters. In tier 2, expect rain because they're running the particle things and expect things to kind of drizzle down. Okay. On tier 3, expect even worse weather because they're not only going to be running this mist thing, also all the runoff, plus they're going to be draining the gray water from tier 2. Yeah. And then as you get down to like floor 4, get fucked. That's kind of, it's a so very it really like tongue in cheek.
How well trickle down economics work. It's
right, exactly. It's truly a trickle down idea, which I thought was very funny, and it is a little bit tongue in cheek in the way that the announcer on the radio kind of talks about it. So like this book isn't all like grim and super realistic in like some sci-fi can be, which I appreciated, right? Like as Blood is running through with her gun Thunder is kind of like giving her a little bit of shit, like, hey, I'm not going to actually kill this guy. Our job is to apprehend him. And she's like, well, he's got a gun on me. And the gun is arguing. And it's kind of funny. You get this like buddy cop scenario here, but it's the person and their gun. So a lot of fun to be had there. I think issue number 1 was pretty solid. Like, and I said this in my notes, like, it's very rare, I think, these days to read a number 1 from Image and think that was bad. Right, you're usually getting a pretty good comic no matter what you pick up, which I love about Image. That's why I'm always willing to try a number 1, because I'm never gonna, like, with very rare exception, am I leaving a number 1 going, God, that was just awful. So I was happy to know that this was better than just okay. I think the gimmick that I should say, I like the gimmick of the story. This, you've got this private detective and her gun, and there's a little bit of backstory about why she's a private detective and not a police officer, and yada, yada, yada. But the thing that really sells me on this book is E.J. Sue's art. Just absolutely fantastic. Like, I don't know what it is, but there is something really solid in the way that Sue and Messiah's work like combines together. Like, there's this depth to the color that is, I don't know, like very... It really jumped out of the page for me. Like you feel like how much like there's this extra layer of something that makes the comic go from really well drawn pages to like the next level up of really fucking good looking comic books. The only way I can describe a similar look is if you look at the current pages of Radiant Black, and I haven't read Radiant Black in a minute, but at least the beginnings of Radiant Black had this same vibe where there's this really like this sidestep away from cartoony but into pure comic book as a style. And Invincible in its last maybe like 90 issues, or that's maybe a bit too much, but it lasts like 50 issues, right? There's like this elevation of how like the combination of color work and line work and inks really adds this just like crisp, solid feeling that I think all Robert Kirkman books have. And this isn't a Robert Kirkman book, but I think Kirkman is going for a specific style in books that he's got his name attached to. And I really just liked how it all worked out. Like, this book looks really, really, really cool, and looks really solid. It's one of the better number ones that I've seen come out of Image. So like, at least from a style perspective.
Okay.
I think it's a fine book. I'll probably check out number 2. Like, the story's really easy to follow. They lay a lot of groundwork to build a world without making the world building the focus of the story. So yeah, I mean, if you're looking for something new to check out this week and you just want to try something, Blood and Thunder is a really solid book for you to pick up on a whim. I think I had never heard of this until we got the Image email about it, but yeah, I think this is super solid. So go check out Blood and Thunder number 1. It's great.
I was going to say, as you were describing it, it sounds like a 2000 AD serial, just like the sci-fi kind of like tongue-in-cheek stuff. That's the vibe I'm getting. So I'm very curious, actually.
Yeah, I think that there is, like, they clearly want to tell like a sci-fi action story with like a police bent or whatever, but like, I think there is a lot of tongue-in-cheek in this book that could go pretty far in a way that makes the book feel less just standard private detective stuff. So yeah, I'm going to see where number 2 goes, obviously, but yeah, just that opening bit about the different tiers, I was like, oh, we're establishing things right away as like this, we're kind of dystopian, but that's the world that a lot of stories take place in. Yeah. Go ahead, Nick. What were you going to ask?
Yeah, this is driving me crazy now. I think it was an Image comic. What was the other Image comic that also prominently featured a autonomous self-aware gun? Was that East of West?
I think there was an autonomous gun in that book.
I think that's what it was. Anyway,
I'll have to scratch my brain about that one.
2080 sounds exactly right for this book. Like, it's the future, it's depressing, but it's also disturbingly funny in how depressing it is, and also it seems somewhat political. So yeah, I'll give it a try.
Yeah, well, we'll report back in a couple of weeks when we're both on an episode
we'll
together.
Share notes,
But let's move on. Let's talk about books that are new or old or something you're just trying to get off your shelf. So whatever you're looking forward to reading next, we're talking about the top of our pile. I want to shout out the folks that are hanging out with us on Discord today, what they have on the top of their pile. Paul G is going to be continuing his Akira journey with Akira Volume 3. So good luck to that, Paul. Danny's going to be reading the brand new Star Wars number 1. He said he really enjoyed the first issue. So Danny got a sneak peek ? So I don't know. Star Wars, I'm going to write this down in my notes. We're going to talk about this in the post credits. Okay, Star Wars number 1. But
yeah, why renumber ?
Nick, we'll get to it. I've already got thoughts. But let's I guess, Paul, why don't you tell us what's on the top of your pile? Or Nick, actually I changed my mind. Nick, you tell us what's on the top of your pile. I don't know. I had it numbered in the doc for a reason,
Is this my punishment for giving notes on your notes? Is that where we're at? Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Now. It's deserved. So for me, it's got to be Let This One Be a Devil, number 3. I most recently read the first 2 issues of this series. A lot of credits on this book because each issue has a story at the back that is part of this little B-story series they're doing called True Weird, which is literally, as the title sounds like, it's a quote-unquote true, you'll see why it's in quotes, story that also happens to be weird. It's exactly what it is as advertised. So in terms of Let This One Be a Devil, you've got the script by James Tynion the fourth and Steve Fox. Tynion is, of course, known for everything from The Deviant to Blue Book, to Talon to Department of Truth, et cetera, et cetera. And Fox apparently largely was known over the last couple of years as being Tynion's editor. So Fox was the editor on The Deviant. Fox was the editor on the Department of Truth, amongst other works. And recently Fox has been doing some writing of his own on Spider-Woman, as well as Alien Paradiso. On art, we have Peter Kowalski, who did the art on Bloodborne, as well as All Eight Eyes, and the absolutely wonderful, I know, bring him up every goddamn time, sorry, Kyle Stark's book, Where Monsters Lie.
We're not going to mention Sex, the series that he did for like 50 issues.
Oh, with Joe Casey, like,
yeah.
Gosh, like 10 years ago, 12 years ago. That's true.
I don't know if I'd recommend that book to anyone, but it's
I don't know if
book.
I would recommend. It's different. It's definitely not going to be like a lot of other books everyone's reading. That's for sure.
Yeah, true.
Colors by Brad Simpson, letters by Tom Napolitano. And in terms of True Weird, it's a rotational team on every single issue. The first issue includes Rachel Deering writing the script and our wonderful friend of the show, bad boy of comics himself, Jesse Lonergan, on art with letters by Aditya Bidikar. In the second issue, the story has a script by Steve Orlando. You probably know him for Commanders in Crisis or Midnighter, and art by Levi Hastings. Also letters by
X-Men books too.
Aditya Bidikar. Yeah, so a lot of people on this book. Much in the same vein as a lot of what we've seen from James Tynion lately. It's sort of a cryptid story. It's kind of a things go bump in the night story, a horror story, but there's a melding of some fact and some fiction all thrown in and mixed together. This story obviously involves the Jersey Devil, which probably most of us maybe know a little bit about. I feel like cryptids are having their moment in the sun right now, which is ironic because most of them don't come out during that time. But
okay, yeah, finish your joke and then I'll give you my reasoning.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there is an obsession right now with bringing cryptids into more popular storytelling, if only because I think millennials were fed this as like teenagers, and now we're like, well, now we can write the book, so like let's talk about that thing that I was obsessed with when I was 17.
Right.
That creepypasta is going to make me money now.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously for those who don't know, Jersey Devils, big deal. It literally has an NHL team named after it. And it's got a fairly average episode of the X-Files dedicated to it. And I learned yesterday it has a roller coaster named after it at the Six Flags Great Adventure in Jackson Township, New Jersey.
Oh, how about that?
And if you knew that we were going to be talking about true horror and terror that plagues mankind daily, you knew Six Flags was going to come up.
Oh wait, okay.
Oh, we had to.
Yeah.
But do you know the true story about the Jersey Devil? Tinian and Fox kind of tell this dual narrative. You follow this guy named Henry Naughton in 1909. He's this scholarly young man. He's come home to the Pine Barrens, which, yes, is also possibly the best episode of The Sopranos. Yes, it's named after this part of New Jersey. We're in New Jersey. It's the Jersey Devil. Keep up. So he comes home. His father dies in this terrible factory accident, and he's coming back to sort of look after his family. Kind of doesn't get the best reception. His younger brother, thinks that all of his book learning has made him out of touch and doesn't think he fits in very well. But he ends up investigating when a fox, quote unquote, terrorizes the family chicken coop. It leaves a trail of blood and viscera. And he ends up running into this thing that a demon, just say it like Jack Black says it in Tribute. That's how you should say demon. And it flies off, but not before eating another chicken. And he catches wind from the local newspaper. Oh, maybe this is related to this thing called the Leeds Devil, which is this older thing. And then with that, the story jumps to 1735, and we follow this woman named Deborah Leeds. She's in the middle of labor with her 13th child. That might be the scariest part of this story. I know Elon Musk isn't terrified about having that many kids, but I think everyone else is like, wow, 13. Jesus. So she's having this pregnancy, and it's a rough one, and she's having a tough time. And she curses the kid and says, let this one be a devil. And then the opening big font credits show up and the title of the book appears. and something, be careful what you wish for, blah, blah, blah. This weird creature emerges, and, as the midwife is swaddling this thing that has a tail.
Right. I've heard this story before.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little on the nose for me. But much like Blue Book, Tinian has done his research. Even if a lot of what we're dealing with here is old wives' tales and apocryphal legends, there still is some.
We also both read that Skinwalker Ranch comic book, Nick. So
which is real. What's the point?
Okay, good. All right, good.
That book is true. I've read. I've done my own research, and I would encourage you to do your own research. After this, we're going to have a very serious talk about ivermectin, because I don't want to hear these things you keep saying about it.
Oh, brother. Nick, I'm going to cut you off if you don't continue talking about this book.
Okay,
Tell us.
Yeah. So you've got these weird apocryphal stories, but there's also this idea that, this idea of the Jersey Devil might be weirdly grounded in this guy named Daniel Leeds, who was a almanac publishing rival of Ben Franklin. This stuff is real. It's on Wikipedia.
Right.
He was this Quaker, but he also loved astrology, and the other Quakers were like, dude, that's kind of weird. What's going on, man? Anyway, just very weird, fascinating stuff. If you're into do you like cults? Do you like Ben Franklin going toe to toe with people? Do you like cryptozoology? It's perfect, and they weave this narrative that sort of melds the cryptozoological and the plausible into this singular thread. And I would recommend this book. I can't recommend this book enough, especially the art by Kowalski and Simpson, and the way they managed to give these two eras of the 20th century and the 18th century these different looks. The 18th century has these heavier, more worn inks, and it's more sepia tone. It's really interesting, and I know probably some other people out there are kind of like, gosh, it feels like Tinian is putting out 900 books a month, and they all seem to be horror. And I would say, yes, both of those things appear to be true. But I would still say, check this out. Check it out. Coheed and Cambria has a song about this beast.
Sort of.
Shibuti, sort of. The end.
Listen, I'm already Coheed and Cambria down in my notes. There's the thing that I think I checked out the first issue of this book, and I think I decided ultimately that it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
But there is this thought process that I've been going through, specifically around James Tynion as well as Rick Remender, where I'm like, you know what? They don't have to all be for me, and that's okay. Because I've got my Department of Truth, and that's all that I need in this life. I've got my Sacrificers, and that's all that I need in this life, right? So I don't know. I'm glad that you're enjoying this. I'm glad to hear that at least the first two issues kept you invested. So maybe I'll pick this up as a trade, because I think maybe if I can get through this whole book in one go, I might like it a little bit more, because number one, I don't think really hooked me. I think I went in kind of maybe hoping or expecting to see something a little closer to Blue Book. Mm-hmm. Sure.
And this is not Blue Book. And obviously part of that is the fact that Blue Book is largely based on heavily documented government, reports from the 1950s and 1960s, and not some casual note from 1740 written on a bar napkin that's I heard that lady had a demon baby. And it's okay, we're dealing with different documents here, clearly. But yeah, clearly the main takeaway from all of this for Tinian is we get it. You love the X-Files, buddy. We clearly
we're going to slowly but surely find out that at the end of Tynion's career, that he's basically just been taking the X-Files and extracting episodes to turn them into comic books, and no one was the wiser except for you, Nick. You figured it out early on.
Well, that's the part that makes me totally disbelieve this theory, is that I'm the one that cracks the code. But okay.
Go ahead, Paul.
I was going to say, I read the first issue of this as well. It's one of those things. I pulled the first issue, forgot that I'd done that, so I never ordered the second issue through previews, so I've only read the first one. And I think similar to Mike, I liked it, but it didn't grab me. And it's one of those things like, yeah, if I were to read this story in one go, it'd probably like work better. As an opening chapter, it was a little open-ended for me as a first issue, but I was curious enough. And as you said, Nick, it's a beautiful looking book. I love the artwork. So yeah.
That's the thing. Yeah.
Well, and also your mileage may vary based on how much you do or don't like or want B stories. I know some people are just annoyed by B stories, or why am I paying this extra money? Is this really worth it? Is it good? Honestly, I think the B stories are closer to what Blue Book was.
Gotcha.
To tell you the truth. Like the first one with Jesse Lonergan involves like a poltergeist haunting, which I think is basically what did they call this?
It's the Amityville Horror, right? Isn't it the Amityville House or something like that?
No, this has to do with the Olive Hill poltergeist haunting from 1968, which is what like the book Poltergeist is somewhat based around.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
And then the second one, the Cardiff Giant, has to do with this giant, 10-foot figurine that this guy carves out of, I think it's gypsum, and then basically tries to pass off as like this ancient petrified human that they found in a well, and it goes into of this con man stories, and of course Barnum and Bailey or whatever gets roped in because no good con story ends without him showing up at some point. Sure. So yeah, if you like that stuff, check it out.
Okay. The backups sound good. Okay. I mean, I love the idea of a hoax like that, but we got to move on. Paul, Paul, tell us what's on the top of your pile.
Okay. Top of my pile is the last issue of the Black Canary Best of the Best miniseries. That's issue 6 of Black Canary Best of the Best. It's a 6-issue miniseries, obviously from DC, written by Tom King, art by Ryan Sook, colors by Dave Stewart, letters by Clayton Cowles. I don't know if I mentioned this series on the show yet, but it's a really good miniseries. And I feel like Tom King went from being a no miss for me to being very hit or miss for me. And this is a hit. Like, I really like this book a lot. I think the benefit is that it's only 6 issues instead of 12, like his normal series are. And I just think it's a tightly focused story. So the main plot here focuses obviously on Black Canary, and each issue is one round of a fight she's having, a knockdown, drag out, I quit fight with Lady Shiva. So they're in the ring. They're in Las Vegas. They got commentators doing it. It's on pay-per-view. It's awesome. Like the setup is already like for me. And then the fact that each issue is like one round, and the way it works is like you have them fighting, then flashbacks to Dinah training for the fight with her mom. And I like that setup because it works really well for Tom King's narration style. The story is really being told through the fight commentators going back and forth, explaining the action. And of course, what they're saying during the fight maps on very conveniently to what's happening in the flashback. So it all is like, it's perfectly like fit to his type of dialogue and his type of storytelling, that sort of structure. And it works really well. On top of they get Ryan Sook, who's an amazing artist. Again, an artist who I don't see working very often. So anytime his name pops up in a book, I'll give it a shot. It looks lovely. The fight scenes are like shockingly brutal because they're not superhero fight scenes. They're legit, bare knuckle boxing fight scenes. There's acrobatic stuff in it. They're surprisingly violent for a mainstream DC comic book, but it makes sense for the nature of the story. On top of that, there's a lot of great emotional moments between Dinah and her mom. There's a beautiful flashback in issue 5 where it's them training together, and it's all done in these like washed out colors, full page spreads. It looks lovely. So I'm very excited to see the last issue of this. The setup, there's a subplot that I don't want to spoil that gets set up in the first issue for why it's only 6 issues, which is kind of an interesting twist. I do want to give a content warning for the series, though. It does deal very bluntly with cancer, and I know that's a trigger or a topic that's hard for some people to look at, especially as it deals with a parent with cancer. It's very honest and unflinching, which I think is the best way to handle that, but I understand it can be kind of tough for some people to read. Yeah. But I really love the series. Again, Black Canary is a character that I think is having a moment between this book and the wonderful Birds of Prey book that's going on right now. Black Canary is front and center. I think she's a really interesting character with a long, rich history. This book does a good job fleshing that out. You don't really have to know anything about Black Canary as a character to jump right in this. It's not really a superhero book. It's about the relationship between her and her mom. And it happens to be a fight as well. Like I'm really surprised how good this series is. It's another hit from Tom King for me, and I'm very excited to see how it wraps up.
Wow, Ryan Sook. No, you're completely right, Paul. Yeah. Just another artist where it's like, wow, where have you been? And also, what a great artist. And Dave Stewart. I don't know how he got unshackled from Mike Mignola's basement, but word is out, Dave. Better get on the lam again, because I'm gonna let Mike know. We're gonna be working for him again real soon.
Paul, when you said there's a Black Canary book here, I didn't look at your notes close enough. I just assumed that this was a Kelly Thompson book. Okay, if only because I feel like she's been writing a Black Canary story forever at DC, right? Uh-huh. It's really interesting to hear that this is a Tom King book and that it's 6 issues, though, because I love the idea of a Tom King miniseries. Like, I'm always up for that because it feels like that guy knows how to like nail a concise story when he does it super well.
Yep.
Like there's that Batman book that he did that like I feel like maybe you could argue is maybe not the best, but I thought it was really cool. Like the big time heist or whatever they had to do. This feels like the same kind of thing. I think you've sold me on checking out the trade for this. I think I'll check it out when it comes collected. Sounds like a really cool idea. Looking at Ryan Sook's art, holy shit, it's great.
Yeah,
so
great.
I think I'm going to check this out, man. Cool. This sounds really cool.
Yeah, highly recommend it. Again, you don't really have to know much about Black Canary. It doesn't feel like it's in continuity so much, so you can kind of jump right in. And yeah, I mean, her and Lady Shiva have a knockdown drag-out fight. I don't know who's going to win, and it's great. I can't wait to find out.
Dude.
So, yeah.
Hell yeah. Well, let me talk about what's on the top of my pile this week. I did things out of order again this week. Sorry, guys. Thanks for just rolling with it. I'm going to be reading Captain Planet #1. This is written by David Pepose, art by Emin Casillas. I'm checking this out because David Pepose is a super nice guy. I've had him on the show before. The guy's been working on all sorts of stuff recently, like over at Dynamite. This book is coming out from Dynamite, so buyer beware if Dynamite's not your thing. There's a million covers for this, as expected. But cover A looks incredible, right? Like the Mark Spears cover for this book looks so cool. I don't know if I could resist picking it up if I saw it in the shop, because it just looks like the coolest cover you've ever seen, right? Like it almost looks like an Alex Ross style book, but like Captain Planet has never looked so cooler. And I will admit, I don't have a huge amount of nostalgia for Captain Planet. I'm sure that I watched it a bunch as a kid, but the only thing I really remember is the, Earth, Fire, Wind, Water, Heart, all the rings coming together. And it's like, Captain Planet, he's a hero. Like, that's all that I remember. I know that the show was very definitely put it into my head that hey, we should care about the Earth, which is maybe what the point of the show was in general. It only ran for 2 years. So I'm curious to see what David Pepose is going to do with this book. The premise or the synopsis that we get from the Dynamite is Earth, Fire, Wind, Water, Heart. With their powers combined, they summon Earth's greatest champion, Captain Planet, but they need to learn to trust each other first. Gaia, the latest high priestess of Earth, has been kidnapped. Whoa, what? Our Planeteers are forced to come together against the newly formed might of Lucian Plunder. Even with Captain Planet at their side, will it be enough to save the very Earth itself? Which, hell yeah. That seems like classic comic book bullshit. I hope that there is a bent in Greenpeace style, hey, but also clean up the fucking Earth, because I remember that being a core concept of the TV show. But yeah, this is interesting. I don't know what the hell Dynamite's doing in terms of just every time, they keep just collecting IPs to publish. It was Dick Tracy published, or no, Thundercats was published through Dynamite pretty recently. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what comes out of this book. I think David Pepose will come up with something interesting. He is I think he's a pretty clever writer in terms of just finding a concept in a theme and just kind of running it to 100%. So we'll see how this book goes, but I'm interested at least to check out #1. Were you guys connected at all to Captain Planet at all as kids? I don't know.
No, I remember it being on, and like you said, I remember the theme song for sure, but I don't really have any nostalgia for it. I couldn't tell you, other than the the premise that you just laid out. I don't know anything else about it, but
yeah,
I don't know. That setup seems interesting, and the idea that if you can find a way in other than just making it a grim and gritty reboot, I mean, I couldn't imagine them doing that. So I don't know. I'm curious. I'll put it that way.
Yeah,
I'm curious.
It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see if this feels almost like a weird Power Rangers vibe, right? You got 5 people, they need to kind of figure out their differences so they can work together. And I think that there's legs there, right? Like each of them represent a different aspect of the Earth, and you can bring all that in. And again, David Pepos, I think, really knows how to handle this stuff. So again, I think that there is something here that could be interesting. So I'm going to read number 1. I'll report back to you guys. Nick, did you watch Captain Planet as a kid?
Yeah, honestly, like I
you were a hardcore
this
PBS
show.
kid, so I think this is on Fox.
This was probably one of the programs I had to watch, like sneak in surreptitiously, like very early in the morning. When my parents weren't like, this isn't Mr. Rogers. But no, I really loved it. I think, as I mentioned earlier, I had an action figure for the guy with the fire ring, and all the figurines. It came with the ring. You could wear, which of course was very exciting. And all the figurines had a different action that they could do. And the fire one, which I think was the American surprise. You could flip the switch on his back, and the figurine, unless my memory is so flagrantly distorted on this, which I'm gonna have to go find this thing on eBay later. It made sparks, and I was so excited, and I could have burned the house down with that thing. Which would have been very anti-Captain Planet, to tell you the truth. Although maybe Captain Planet would be like, guys, we need to get back to nature. Set it ablaze.
Right.
So,
that's the radical take that this new Captain Planet book is. Captain Planet is like, we got to get back to nature.
Oh my God.
Interesting. Well, I did find a picture of someone's post of all of their Captain Planet action figures. Maybe this one didn't have the sparkler in it, but I'm sure there was a version that did.
At one point.
I'm not surprised by that. 90s toys were a different breed of dangerous for children. But yeah, so I'll let you guys know how Captain Planet number 1 is. We got a couple things to talk about in the post credits. We're going to wrap up the show here. I want to say thank you to Paul and Nick. Thank you to Nick for stepping in last minute to make this show work today. Thank you to Zach for proof listening. Thank you to the folks that were hanging out with us on Discord. We appreciate you. Thank you to Zander for editing. Next week's show is a big one. We're going to have Kevin Scott talking about Gwenpool number 1. It's going to be me and Brian. That'll be really exciting. We're going to have a fun time. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for us this week. So until next time, comics are good, and so are you.